Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 12th of June. Looking at the euro dollar first, and well, Friday we saw this, well, we ended up with a bit of a little hammer or doji candle sort of sitting there, pushing us back into the daily 8 moving average this morning. Now, there are some targets below us, still got the monthly pivot below us. We've just run into the weekly pivot where we're sitting at the moment. And it's from when you start coming down the 4-hour time frame, it looks a little bit more bearish than the daily does. The daily obviously looks like it may have a reversal. There's a bit more bearishness sort of sitting here, running into this daily pivot. Sorry, weekly pivot. But we have got the daily pivot untouched below. There is a bit of a gap appearing on my chart here. Now, whether that's a genuine gap, we'll see, but certainly looks like there's a bit of an unfilled gap there. So this morning, I'll just wait a little bit to see how this points us. If it starts breaking down, well, the daily pivot looks like a reasonable opportunity, although we're within a smidgen of running up towards the daily R1, and if it starts breaking out of that and the previous day's highs, well, perhaps we're putting a bit of a reversal in here. So just a bit of patience first thing on that. On the pound, just run down indecision, and certainly the Prime Minister's weakened her hand significantly, as we know from Friday. And well, markets are looking at this in many different ways now. Some are thinking, well, it's going to have to be a soft Brexit, which has sort of cheered some up, but the indecision, the partner chosen, etc., isn't going to be to everyone's liking, and we could yet see some more turmoil, and maybe more. All the time we're seeing lots of discussions and talks talking about another election this year, so it doesn't make for a solid pound at that basis. And well, just looking at the price action here, we've got lower high confirmed by that price action last week even. We're sitting there with a doji on Friday now. Well, there is a gap on some platforms above us on the intra-day gap that's sort of sitting here, not showing on these time frames, but there is a bit of a gap looking up above us with some brokers, and it's whether or not that price eventually runs back towards that and fills it. At the moment, we're just short of a weekly pivot. Coming down the time frames here, we've got the daily pivot already touched, weekly pivot just above us. If it was to start reversing at all, well, there could be a sort of a push up for that sort of level, but at the moment, well, it's certainly an indecisive currency for sure, or I'm indecisive about the currency. I don't know which one's more powerful, my indecision or the currencies. Either way, it's not looking great. It's looking at the dollar yen then, and a bit of a different picture here from a daily perspective. We came just fractionally short of the weekly pivot on Friday. It's just selling off as I look now. There's some consolidation sitting there across the 4-hourly here, just short of this week's pivot. As we look through there, well, actually, it's a bit more movement potentially down for that weekly pivot. That weekly pivot looks a reasonable opportunity at the moment. That would, in terms of what I'd be looking at, that certainly would be a potential target. Any change from this? I'm just looking at any further upside, but there is still potential upside on this pairing. The bigger picture, as I said last week, had a bit of a bullish play on it from a bit of a harmonic type pattern that occurred. So there is the potential for it still to push up. It just came fractionally short of its first target, which would have been pretty close into that 21. But well, the technicals there overtook, and I think traders obviously sold in towards that weekly pivot. But any sort of more rally, any further rallies could see us pushing back up towards the 21, maybe beyond, and up to the weekly. So there's still some potential there, but at the moment it's looking weaker. Aussie dollar. Well, the Aussie dollar, I talked about it last week, a sort of bit of a bull flag going in at the end of last week there. There's a couple of bars, but the more we sort of sit here in this sort of indecisive pattern, it really should just becomes, instead of a flag pattern, it becomes a downward trend. Now it's holding up pretty well in the current 4-hour session, but when you start coming out to the hourlies, it looks a bit indecisive. If anything, it could look like we could run down towards that weekly pivot that's just come in this week. So any sort of move there would give the green light towards that sort of area. And finally, the Canadian dollar. Canadian dollar chopped around here, got um, on the daily point of view, Friday's sell-off there put us in a pivot swing, a break of Friday's lows there. May see us coming down towards the daily S1, that 200 sort of zone below us. It is looking a lot more choppy though on the 4-hourlies here. This is sort of indecisive sort of move here, and certainly when you start coming down to the hourlies, we've got a couple of pivots above us, and really the probability of those both being hit today probably pretty high. So at the moment it looks like it might just push up that way. Looking at oil at the moment, the oil price is, there we go, pretty flat here. And if anything, starting to fall off this morning, which again could push that Canadian dollar up towards its daily, weekly pivots above us this morning at least, or maybe this afternoon. Sometimes it will just chop all around for this morning, in the morning and midday-ish, push up towards the target. So that's pretty much it. News-wise, there's nothing of significance out this morning to look forward to, but there is some key news this week, and with that in mind, I mean, we're really looking towards, I believe it's was it Wednesday, Wednesday 14th, when we've got the Fed data coming out, and I think that's the big news of the, well, certainly is the big news, and whether markets would just chop around a little bit earlier week. There's not much out tomorrow either. It's certainly a possibility. Okay, have a great day. Bye for now.